Hello, welcome to Grown Folks Fitness. I'm Raven, and today's topic is going to be resistance. Resistance is something that is actually more important than any of the other aspects of health and fitness that you may have read about or seen videos about or read magazine articles about. You see a million articles about how to get a six-pack or how to build strong delts or how to get lean, but rarely will you see a lot of articles about resistance. And that's unfortunate because resistance will derail even the most excited person, okay? Resistance is something that will absolutely come for you if you set a goal, okay? It will absolutely come for you, okay? It will come for you. So it's important to know that the minute you set a goal, resistance is sitting right here looking at you like, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. You're not making any of these changes. No, sirree, you're going to stay exactly the same. So, in fact, let me start with that. Resistance is an overwhelming, almost irresistible urge to stay the same. Okay, so on a surface level, we know in our minds, in our surface mind, that we want to make certain changes. We know we're spending too much money and we need to get that together, or we know that we're becoming unhealthy and we need to address that. Okay, we know superficially that we need to make these changes, but there is also a deep down resistance to that comes at the minute you set a goal. So as a trainer and a coach, resistance is particularly depressing for me because I can watch it happening to somebody from the outside. So you have a client, or maybe you have a friend or family member or whatever, and you listen to them and all the changes that they're going to make, and they're so excited, and they've gone out and bought new exercise clothes and new spotless shoes to wear for their new runs that they're going to start taking, and they're all set. They're all ready to go. Super excited, smiling from ear to ear. And then you see that resistance has crept up behind them and grabbed them by the throat and is now whispering into their ear, "You don't really have time for this. It's only one extra slice of cake. You'll burn it off tomorrow. In fact, why don't you start this next week when it'll be much easier then?" And so on and so forth, okay? Resistance will come for you. And it's very sad to watch from the outside, but it doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to be this way. So what resistance is not is homeostasis. So homeostasis is a normal process. Our bodies naturally, and nature in fact, seeks to maintain a balance at all times. So if we get too hot, we sweat. Okay, if we get too cold, we get goose pimples, and that keeps the heat in. So our body is trying to maintain a livable, survival body temperature, and it'll do what it needs to do in order to keep us alive. So we need that, and that's not resistance. Resistance is also not set point. We do naturally have a set point in our bodies. And all creatures in nature have a body type. They have a way that they're supposed to look. And as humans, it's the same thing. If you look in nature, like for example, dogs, if you look at a Saint Bernard does not look like a greyhound. Okay, and a Saint Bernard can admire the greyhound and think that the greyhound looks beautiful. But it doesn't matter how little the Saint Bernard eats. It's not going to look like a greyhound. And a Saint Bernard is not overweight. A Saint Bernard is a Saint Bernard. But if it tries to starve itself to look like a greyhound, it's just going to be a sickly, no energy Saint Bernard. It's never going to be a greyhound. And likewise, a greyhound may look at the Saint Bernard and think, "My God, the Saint Bernard is beautiful. That's what I want to look like. I'm sick of being a scrawny greyhound. I want to look like a Saint Bernard." And the greyhound can eat and eat and eat, and maybe it gets a pot belly, maybe it gets sluggish. Okay, it's not going to ever look like a Saint Bernard because it's not supposed to. A greyhound is beautiful, and a Saint Bernard is beautiful. You're beautiful. I'm beautiful. Okay, assuming that we're, unlike animals, they don't eat beyond what their hunger dictates, unless some human is stuffing them. But animals naturally regulate their diets, and so they look the way they're supposed to look. The humans, we have artificial things that have gone on, and we have processed foods that cause us to look not like how we're supposed to look. But assuming that you are getting a normal amount of physical activity and you're eating reasonably, you're going to look a certain way. Maybe you're a St. Bernard, maybe you're a Greyhound, maybe you're somewhere in the middle. But that's perfect for you. So that's not resistance, okay? Resistance is in the mind. It's in here. Resistance will, like I said, tell you don't have any time for this, that it's not important, that other people don't need to do this, or, whatever the excuses are. That is resistance, and you don't have to fall for it. Okay, so we want to get rid of all excuses. You're not going to start tomorrow. You're not going to have an extra slice of cake and burn it off the next day. Okay. Whenever you hear these things come up, that's resistance. Resistance is like the parable in the Bible about the seed being sown. And I'm not a Christian, but I love and respect all religions, and I know about almost all of them. So there's a parable in the Bible about the Word of God being like seed sown. And the seed is the same. The seed that's sown is the same, but the soil is going to differ. And sometimes the seed doesn't even have a chance to hit the ground before the birds come and take it away. So it never makes any impact whatsoever. Resistance is really like the seed that was sown on the shallow soil. So in the parable, there is seed that's sown on the shallow soil. It springs up. It looks beautiful. It looks like the healthy crop that sprung up on the good soil. But what happens is when the heat of the sun comes out, and when the elements come out and put pressure on this new crop, it withers and dies right away. Okay, so the roots were never there. And really that's what resistance is. Resistance will come and it'll choke out the good seed that was put there by your excitement and your dedication to your goal. So resistance also comes out in one other way. Besides the excuses and the procrastination and these things, there's also another brand of resistance that comes in the form of your own self-concept. Now this one is actually kind of tricky, because if you have successfully fought all the previous efforts of resistance, this one can sometimes get you. This resistance comes when you have made changes, okay, and the person that you see in the mirror and the person that you're interacting with yourself, you no longer recognize that person. So if you've been overweight all of your life, for example, and you finally start to look and feel healthy, you can move about, you can do things you haven't done in years, that's not always a 100% positive thing. And we assume that it will be. And we don't take into account that everyone is used to us being a certain way. We are used to us being a certain way. And when we change that, it's not always 100% positive. Sometimes the resistance comes in the form of other people trying to sabotage you. Sometimes it's not you saying that you need that extra slice of cake. It's a boyfriend, or it's a friend, a jealous best friend who you both were overweight together, and now you're starting to go shopping and have fun, and you're starting to do things with your kids that you haven't been able to do. And it's not so much that people are evil. It's just that now you're tapping into their resistance, because by implication they should be doing something. Or they're afraid of losing you. Or it could be your own fears. You're afraid of losing them. Or you just don't know how to be in a skinnier body. And not even just weight loss. It could be finances. You've always been struggling to get out of debt, to make some money. Okay, when you start doing it, who are you as a wealthy person? Who is that? How are you supposed to be now? You've spent so much time worrying about making money. Now you have it. Now what? Okay? So you have to know that's another form of resistance that can come for you. Even if you sidestep and you get around all the previous forms of resistance, like the excuses, the self-concept is another thing that can come get you. So we don't need to take this lying down. There's things that we can do, okay? First thing is acknowledge resistance. Give it the respect that it's due, okay? Because it is there, it's real, and it will come for you. Whether you acknowledge it or don't acknowledge it, it's coming, okay? So first is acknowledge that it's coming, knowing that no matter how strongly you want to change, no matter how many concrete reasons you have, you're not the exception. Resistance will come for you, just like it'll come for me and anybody else, okay? Resistance is real. First, accept that, okay? Second, once you've accepted it, okay, the next thing is to think about how it might show up, okay? So depending upon the type of change you're wanting to make, resistance will show up in slightly different ways. So let's say you decide you want to lose weight, okay? That's all well and good when you're feeling well rested and well fed and excited, okay? But in a couple weeks, okay, when you're hungry, when you start getting bored, when you start feeling uncomfortable, when a coworker comes and brings in donuts and puts them in the lunchroom, or when you're taking the subway home and somebody walks in there with some french fries and you smell it, okay, so that's when all the excitement from the beginning is totally worn off, and you need to know you have to plan in advance. What are you going to do about these things? So one of the things, and you have to come up with these that'll work for you. No one else can tell you what you should do. There are some suggestions. For example, you can keep, snacks available at all times. You can keep cut up fruits and vegetables on you, readily accessible so that you don't have to think about it. You can have protein bars in your purse or in your bag, or keep them in your desk so that whenever you feel tempted, there's something that's ready to go. You can create an accountability partner at work or at school or, in your family. Somebody that is doing it with you so that you both can egg each other on in a positive way instead of, in a negative way. You can both cheer each other on. So those are some suggestions, but you have to formulate a plan that's going to work for you, and you're going to have to try a few things and be willing to experiment to see what works, okay? And another thing that comes up with resistance is blame, okay? So the first thing you have to do when you're making a change, other than acknowledge resistance, is to realize that this is your deal, okay? So even if you hire a coach or a trainer or have an accountability partner, your changes are your problem and your responsibility. So I've heard people blame the food industry, media, their partner, their coach. None of these people are responsible for your progress. That's your deal, your responsibility, and it's really important if you want to make lasting change to accept that it's your responsibility, that the buck stops with you. Okay? And last but not least, if you do fail, if resistance gets the better of you, don't let that be your death knell. Don't let that be the end. Resistance is a powerful force. It's an incredibly powerful opponent, and it will win some of the battles. You have to think of making progress in your life not like a one-time event. It's like going to the boxing ring. And I don't watch boxing, so I'm not sure how many rounds they get. I think it's 13, okay? But regardless, if somebody gets beat up in the first round, it's not over. As long as they're still in the fight, as long as they can still stand, then they can get in there in the second round. Maybe they'll do better. And so that's how it is with resistance. You're not down for the count ever, and you don't only get 13 rounds. You get as many rounds as you're willing to fight. So if perchance you do give in to resistance and you convince yourself that you don't have time or exercise is too hard or you'll do it next week, if you actually listen to these excuses and you give in and you quit temporarily, Don't let that get to you. Know that resistance is powerful. It got you. It got you. It's true. But it's not over. So pick yourself up. Tell yourself, look at yourself in the mirror and say, I gave in to resistance. Resistance won that round. It's not going to win the next round. And you just get back in there and, you change your plan. You give resistance the respect that it's due. And you keep going. So I'll just leave you with that. You can do this. It's not insurmountable. Resistance seems all powerful, but it isn't. You are all powerful. Everything that you need is within you. Everything that you need is within you, and you can absolutely do this. You can absolutely do this. Peace and blessings.